radius squared, times pi gives you the the amount of volume in cubic inches. So measure and then multiply it by the height. And where this barrel is sitting is 22 inches. So that is worked out. We'll do that math on the 10 key. You have to excuse the rudimentary nature of this video again. So we will start by 22.75 divided by 2 equals 11.38 times 11.38 is 129 square inches times 3.1416. 406 times the height of the barrel, 22 inches, equals 8,950 square inches divided by 231 cubic inches per gallon. It might be 232. That's 231 or 232, roughly the same. Equals 38.75 gallons. So I'm going to redo that. So we got 38.75 gallons. It's probably closer to 40. So the second way you can check that is you can either use a dip tube, you can stick a dipstick into your barrel, such as this, and measure an exact measurement. Or the other way you're going to measure your volume is by the outside of the tank. Has graduations on it. It's probably difficult to see in the video, but you'll pump this up, pump your tank full of biodiesel, and you will go ahead and measure the volume there. Now, if you're Canadian or you're familiar with the metric system, just mark those gallons, mark your graduations in liters as well. Just write on there with a Sharpie if you want to what the liters are, because we're going to do our lab calculations in liters. Okay, so what we're going to do next is get ready to measure, or rather, I'm sorry, get ready to fill, or talk about filtering. Okay, so there's a couple ways you can filter. This is a barrel screen. Fits in the tank like that. That is 100 microns, pretty fine. It will clog up if the oil is not real good, or real clean to begin with, or warm. So that's kind of a second option. I don't filter mine that thin or that fine, but you can. Alright, another couple ways you can do it is the old China cap screen, like that. And you can just pump into there from your waste vegetable oil source. My waste vegetable oil source gets pumped in a pump like this from one barrel in the back of my pickup into that barrel on the pallet. That barrel is also equipped with that screen, which is something like 50 microns, 500 microns, pretty fine as well. It does clog a little bit, but it flows pretty well. Alright, so that concludes the first part. Again, we're going to heat our oil to 120 to 130. I'm actually heating this oil up a little bit warmer, but I'm going to let it cool just to drive off any water in there. You do not want any water in your biodiesel reaction, otherwise you're going to have problems getting a complete reaction as the methanol will bond with the water instead of with your biodiesel. Very bad. Alright, so that is step one. We will come back in a minute and start pumping. Alright, so here we are, about to transfer from our waste vegetable oil, heated, again to between 120 and 130, and we are going to start with all valves closed. Every valve closed. Closed, 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 closed. Closed, closed. Closed, 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 closed. All valves closed. Okay, start by opening the valves on the 3/4 inch union on your waste vegetable oil tank. You will see the waste vegetable oil run into this. You can hear it gurgling as the oil starts to catch into there. So basically what we're going to do first here is we're going to go ahead and wait for that to stop. Then we will turn on the valve that runs to the top of the tank and fill through the top of the cone tank. So that will run by itself by gravity, as the waste oil level reaches the same level as the pump. Actually, the impeller is going to hold it. Oh, there it goes. And you can see sort of how it just flows by itself. Alright, since I don't include a whole lot of electrics, we're going to plug this pump in. How nice. I apologize for not being able to see anything. And we're going to start pumping in through the top of the tank. As you can see, the pump actually works pretty well. Pumps fairly quickly. And we're going to go ahead and fill this tank completely with vegetable oil. It won't take but a few minutes. So a couple things, little tricks here if you like. You can elevate your waste vegetable oil barrel, or if you're running it from like a second spot instead of right next to your pallet, if you put it a little ways away, you can elevate your waste vegetable oil, or you can just put it on some 4x4s or 2x2s to get a little bit higher, because as we get to the bottom of this, we're going to tilt it a little bit. And that's basically all there is to pumping that in there. It is going to pump at, supposedly it's rated at 10 gallons a minute, but it seems to be going faster than that. Probably because there's a little bit extra head from the barrel having some pressure there. I'm going to go ahead and shut this down. We'll come back when it's... Okay, so now we're back. I'm going to go ahead and shut off these valves. I just shut that one off. The reason I did that is, as you can see, the bottom of your barrel got some pretty good grunge in there. I'm not going to react that stuff just because it's nasty down there. We're going to throw that out. That's probably going to become, for my dirt roads, what am I trying to say? Road dust abatement. So we'll go ahead and close the valves on the union. Bottom valve, and we're going to shut this top valve off after we shut off the pump. So we're going to shut off the pump. And now we'll just close all the valves again, just to be safe. Alright, so we closed all the valves. That's all there is to fill in that tank. And we really yielded out 35 gallons. This batch is going to be a little bit smaller, but all the bigger we're going to make it today. And there's probably like 3 gallons in there, so that's 3 gallons in there and maybe 0.75, no, maybe not quite 0.75 gallons in there. But roughly, your dipstick measurement is pretty close to what you're going to see on the side of your barrel, for the simple fact that you're going to lose a little bit with the movement to, well, not with the movement rather, but with the whatever kind of grunge is sitting in the bottom of your barrel. Okay, so next up we are going to take that 35 gallons and convert it to liters on the old 10 key. So we have 35 gallons times 3.785. 3.785 is your conversion of number of liters to gallons. So multiply that times your number of gallons and you get 132.48 liters. Okay, so now this oil is actually pretty good. Part of the reason it's pretty good is we're re-reacting maybe 5 gallons of biodiesel that was kind of questionable. It had some hydrogenated oil in it and that didn't look quite right to me, so I'm going to re-react it. But anyway, so we're not going to use much catalyst, and our catalyst amount came out to only 1.5 grams beyond the additional 7 grams, the base level of catalyst. So we're going to use 8.5 grams of KOH per liter. So we're going to multiply our 132.48 times 8.5 grams per liter. This is going to give us 1126 for the number of grams of KOH that we're going to add in to our methanol to make our potassium methoxide. So what we're going to do next is we're going to grab a glove or two. We're going to turn on our scale. If you have this scale, it's super easy to use. Okay. How about that for rudimentary? Anyway, so we check that. 0 grams. We tared it, so it's good. We're actually going to turn on the light. Isn't that cute? Alright, so we're going to go over to our potassium hydroxide bag. Now, I've gotten a little more careless than I should. You should absolutely positively have a respirator on and probably much better gloves than what we've got going on here. We have got some real cheap thin gloves, and we should probably be wearing much heavier gloves. But, again, I've gotten lazy in my old age. Don't do this at home. You should be wearing a heavier glove. So we'll measure out 1,100 grams. And you can use a bigger scoop. This will hold like 250 grams per scoop. All I've got around. Neighbor's dog, go away. Dusty, go. A smart dog. Not very smart about walking into a working biodiesel factory. Look at that good boy. He's a good boy, aren't you? All right, back to work. So we're going to continue to measure that out. And again, this is a little bit slower, but whatever. I'm being an idiot. I should just have one scoop. The reason you want one scoop, just less exposure to dust. But again, the other problem with that is when you're handling it, it's a little bit harder. Okay, so we've got 956, so we'll just add in slowly. We're going to get there. 1113, 1120. Oops. Okay. 1129. 3 grams out. Looks like 3 grams to me. 28. I'm spilling KOH on my work vest. Very stupid. Okay. Okay, 1126. Put that back in our bag. Tighten our bag up. Better way to store KOH is in a 5-gallon pail with a sealable lid. Whatever. Again, I talk a lot, but I don't do so much. Haha. That's what the dog thinks too. You do not want to eat that. What are you, crazy? Go. Go. Dusty, go. Good boy. Alright, so now what we're going to do is this is very simple. It's one of my nice little, not really inventions by any stretch, but a nice little design feature I've got here. So we've got our lid. You've got your barrels, you've got your screen in there. Pretty simple. Take your KOH and your basket, or your hopper rather. I wish I had 2 hands. Okay. And just go ahead and dump that. Voila. Into your bucket. Okay. Screw your lid on. Now it's methoxide time. We'll mix the methanol in a second. And if you want to be smart, put your scale bin back on your scale and check for zero to make sure you actually zeroed it correctly. Alright, cool. So now we've got our methoxide ready to roll here. So another nice little design feature is these banjo quick disconnects. So they've got my methanol pump is going to be leading from here. Go ahead and put that in there, lock down the ear tabs, whatever you want to call those things, and you're ready to start pumping from your methanol barrel. So mine looks like methanol barrel pump. Now, 2 quick things here. Methanol is as nasty stuff as you'll want to encounter. I generally wear a full face respirator and heavy black gloves. Full face respirator, heavy black gloves. You cannot be too safety conscious when it comes to methanol. Alright, so anyways, I'm going to pump this in there. Actually, you know what? You're not going to see me pump this in there because I'm going to put on my full face respirator. Unless I can do this one-handed and stay clear of it, but I don't think I'm going to be able to do that. Nope. Alright, so what I'm going to do is at this point in time, you're going to pump in your 20%. So we have 35 gallons of biodiesel, or of waste vegetable oil. Alright? And your catalyst volume is 20%. Some places might say as high as 22%, but I use 20. So you may want to check your own texts. So on the side of this, we're going to fill this up to 7 gallons, which is right there. Now I'm going to go ahead and do that by myself. And I'm not going to see it on the camera, but the methanol will dissolve readily in here. I'm going to go put on my full face mask and my heavy gloves and pump this in, and be back in a moment.
Okay, so we're back. I'm back in my full face mask and ready to roll. Feeling a whole lot more safe about safety. Alright, so our KOH is in there in our screen. We're going to put our lid back on. Turn that down. And I'm going to go ahead and put this on a tripod. Everybody can see what's going on here. And our barrel pump. Okay. So, the lighting's a little screwy. Hopefully it'll work alright. As far as you can be able to see. Okay, so methanol is nothing to screw with. Full face respirator, no sense losing an eye trying to save a few bucks. So we're going to go ahead and go over to our methanol barrel pump. We're going to put our banjo quick disconnect into the female side, tighten it down, open up the valve, make sure all valves are closed again. And we are going to go ahead and pump that full to 7 gallons. Which, of course, is going to need an adjuster. Alright. So we're going to put 7 gallons of ethanol in there. Nothing worse than a pump that's not. Or 5 or 6 gallons. The methanol is difficult to see. I call that 6.5. And 2 more strokes. More stroke. $7 gallons, but we need to complete the dead space of the KOH that we are offsetting, so we want to be slightly above 7 gallons, which we're at now. Go ahead and run any more than like a second air in there. Looks pretty good. Disconnect while holding it, so it doesn't flop around. Close that. And set that aside. We're done with the nasty stuff. You can open it if you like to see if the vent is. Now I'm going to go ahead and open the top of this so you can see how quickly it dissolves. Shuck off one of my gloves. Now you can see some vapor coming off, avoid at all costs. And you can see how all the KOH is completely dissolved. Smooth like butter. Alright, so that pump that I have is arguably a giant piece of crap. If you put your lid back on, minimize the amount of methanol vapor around. shut this down, go wash off my gloves to make sure there's no extra methanol on there. And then we're going to ready to be started with the next process.
Alright, now that we've mixed the methanol with the potassium hydroxide, we're ready to start mixing everything together. The methoxide with the waste vegetable oil. So we were going to start that. We're going to open the valve here on the bottom of the tank. We're going to open up the next valve, the most upstream. We're going to close all the other valves. First valve below the tank. The next valve upstream. And then the valve headed to the top of the tank. Go ahead and turn on pump. Alright, now we're going to start recirculating through here. You can hear it. Make sure the lid's on. Make sure the lid's on the methanol barrel. Now what we're going to do, we're going to cut back this valve about 25%. We're going to open up the methanol, rather, to 25% open. We're going to open up the methanol line about 10%. You can start to see the bubbles and it flow in there and all that. Now, the reason we're doing that is the methanol, the pump does not have enough power to pull from both places equally. So you want to run the methanol in at about a gallon a minute. So we're going to crack open the methanol line about 10%, maybe 20%. We're going to cut back the valve below the big cone tank down to about 25% open as well. You're going to see, when we do that, you're going to see this line get milky white. Now you can come over here to your methoxide mixture, and you can watch it sort of drain at the same time, so you got your right rate down. You should see it drain at about a gallon a minute. So we're going to let that go ahead and drain for about the next 7 minutes, or mix, I should say, for about the next 7 minutes. Pretty straightforward at this point in time. And then you'll also see this increase at about the same rate as well. So I'm going to go ahead and shut this off, and we're going to get started, and I'll come back here in a minute. Alright, as we got down, getting down to basically the level where this tank's empty, and it's at a half a gallon now, so you basically just want to be kind of careful that as you watch it as it runs down this last bit of hose here, start seeing in the cone, so that way you just won't get any vegetable, and it is gone and cavitating. So that way you don't want to get any extra veg in there to stain the hose or whatever. Now if you're going to get real picky, what you can do is you can shut this valve off, open this valve up, and let it suck that last little air out, then open the valve on the bottom here so it circulates again, stops cavitating. Close it, open this line again on the vegetable oil, or on the methanol, and get every last drop out. Okay, now it's completely empty. That line is completely empty, so that's probably a little safer. You can see it splashing around or whatever there. So now we're just going to let it circulate for 2 hours. So all you need to do is let her go. 2 hours, and you can shut off your pump. Wait 12 or 24 hours, and then we're ready to drain off the glycerin in the morning. What I usually do is, I'll just take a simple pump timer, or a little electrical timer. Get the three-prong kind that's rated for like 15 amps or whatever. Set this for 2 hours after it is now. Plug that into your outlet. Plug the pump in there. 2 hours later, the pump shuts off. You probably shouldn't do that for the first couple of times until you get really used to everything, and then it'll be really, second nature to you. But at this point in time, you're going to have this valve open here, 100%, this valve open 100%, the valve leading to the top of the tank, all open 100%, all other valves closed. At this point in time, 2 hours to let mix, you're done basically with all operator involvement until tomorrow when we start draining out the glycerin and doing the wash. So this concludes this installment. Okay, so we're back at the ranch here. After about 18 hours, we're looking at our tank and we can sort of see the glycerin level right here, darker level on this, and good biodiesel up here. Sort of see that. So what we've got to do now is drain off the glycerin. We clearly had a pretty good reaction. Got basically as many gallons of glycerin as methanol that we put in. So we're going to go ahead and drain off our glycerin, and we're going to do that with the bottom of the tank. This drain valve, and I'm going to drain it into this container here. Though that container is higher, the head pressure will be enough to push it down. So again, you start with all your valves closed. I already opened this one. This valve you open, this valve you will open. Then you're going to let your glycerin go. See how it's nice and black. I'm actually dark reddish brown. And just go ahead and let it float, say maybe a gallon a minute again. And you can sort of just watch it fall through the cone here. If you want to, you can candle that, sort of see it go. The only trick here is what we're going to do is we're going to follow each one of the valves up. So this is going to be the first one open, second one open, third one open, fourth one open, and then we're going to use the biodiesel that's in the hose leading to the top of the tank. That is going to chase all the glycerin out of the system. Now when we get to that level, that won't be high enough to push it through, and we'll use a 5-gallon container and drain from that 5-gallon container. We'll set that container at the lowest point here and drain from there. So I'm going to grab that container and I'm going to set this one on its side, like that. Put the hose in there, and that'll be at the lowest point below everything else. Let's see where we're at here. It's draining nice and slow for us here. We may turn that up a bit, but you really can't fight gravity here. And it's flowing a little faster. And I'm tempted to pull this out so you can sort of see what we're dealing with here. Pretty thick brown molasses-like sludge. I don't know if that's in the field of view or not. Anyhow, it's obvious that what you've got here is glycerin versus good biodiesel. And you'll be able to see we're about a gallon left here. You'll be able to see the change is quite obvious. You'll be able to see it in this hose, will turn almost golden, or you'll be able to see it here. And I typically look here first, because that way you'll waste less biodiesel. But this whole thing will take about 5 minutes. You should always wear gloves. The glycerin's got methanol in it, it's a little toxic. And it's breaking there. So you can sort of see here that is definitely biodiesel at that point. And then you can hear it running in here. It changes viscosity and runs in a lot faster. Now there'll be a little bit down here that will continue to settle, so we'll just pop that out a little bit more. And it looks pretty good. So we're going to go ahead and close this valve on the bottom of the tank. And now we're going to start draining back through the system. But in order to do that, we're going to drop our hose back down to a lower level here. I'm going to set that in there like this. This hose has got some tension to it naturally, so it's going to move a little bit. Alright, so again, we'll open up this downstream valve, keep this closed, and we'll open up this this upstream valve. Alright, and it's going to drain a little bit. But now we're going to follow the valves back up through our system here. You could open the valve on the methanol, but you don't really need to. And you could open up the valve on the waste vegetable oil, but you don't really need to unless you're willing to break the union. So that would be about the only valves. And then you'll go ahead and open up the valve on the top of the hose, or the hose leading to the top of the tank, and that'll run everything back through, clearing this line of glycerin and then that will flush the manifold as well. So as I open that up, that's running there. You can see the glycerin in there. And again, this needs to be a little bit lower. This needs to be the lowest point here so it all runs out. And I don't know if that's actually true right now. Okay, it is raining.
I think it's going to snow.
I think it's going to snow too.
Well, it's 40 degrees right now, so I guess it's not going to snow. It's going to rain.
Yeah, so just kind of wait for that to drain because it's draining slowly. With the lack of gravity or head pressure. Okay, so that basically entails all your draining of your glycerin. You can check this here again in your cone to see if there's any more glycerin that's showing up there. But we're going to wash next, and so that'll take out any other residual glycerin. If you're not going to wash, you're going to want to let your biodiesel settle for a couple of weeks to let any glycerin that may continue to react or fall out settle in the bottom of the tank. And I use a blue plastic 55-gallon drum to store mine in. Alright, so we're just going to help along this last little bit here. And it looks like it's basically empty at this point. Okay. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and shut these valves. And I may just run a little bit more glycerin out of there because it's kind of grungy. And there may have been a little bit of glycerin that backed up onto this valve, but I'm not going to worry about it. It's such a trivial, small amount. But you can see here, it's quite clear, yellow looking. You can see it from a distance even. Alright, so now we're going to go ahead and hook up a garden hose to the top of our tank here to our fog nozzle. Flows in at 1/4 gallon a minute. So we're going to turn that on, and we're going to start getting a little bit of water in there. 1/4 gallon a minute is pretty slow, so you barely have to crack your hose. So I'm going to do that now. Alright, so I'll open this up. So you can see what we're dealing with here. And I, like an idiot, forgot to put the fog nozzle on there. Oh, brilliant. We'll have our days, don't we? Well, we've got multiple problems here. So we're going to click that in, shut off our hose. Got a few big problems right now. I sort of botched that up. Oh well. Alright, well, it doesn't really matter. Fuck. Alright, so now we're back and we're going to do our washing phase. I've hooked a garden hose to the top of the large cone tank to the female threaded hose fitting there, and just hook up a garden hose to that. It runs in at 1 quart per minute, so 1/4 of a gallon per minute. So basically what we're going to do is we're going to add that in there. You can figure in round numbers you're thinking you're going to add probably whatever amount you put in methanol, and then probably, you know, a little bit more. So if you put in 20% in methanol, you want to add at least that in water as far as your wash phase goes. Now I've been running this in for a couple of minutes just to sort of get it started. You can see at the bottom of the cone tank, it's a little bit lighter down here. That's water. Down here is kind of a water biodiesel mix there. But the water's already started to flow down there. So you want to go ahead and let that, you can sort of see how it's much darker up here. And then as you look down here, it is kind of a clear color. Anyways, you're going to go ahead and let that run in there for roughly, in the case of this, we have 35 gallons of biodiesel. So So we're going to go ahead and add in, maybe 10 gallons of water. So we're going to go ahead and just look at the graduations on the side at 10 gallons of water, and we're going to let that settle for about 6 hours. And that water will go to the bottom. It's already going to the bottom now. We just want a cleaner break. You repeat this washing process as many times as you like. I'm not a chemist, but I would do it a couple, 3 times, depending on how clear the wash water is. I'm not the best resource for that as far as knowing when you need to stop washing. But a couple times is probably sufficient, but you really need to sort of do your own research on that to find out how clear a fuel you need and want. So I'm going to go ahead and shut this off, and we're going to come back here in about 4 to 6 hours when the water has settled. Alright, so we're back now after some settling time. We've actually only let it settle about 2 hours, but as you're looking at the break, it looks pretty good. And the water is actually quite clear, as you can see. So, we're going to drain the water off as much as we can. And then, the next step is we're going to pump into our drying barrel. But we're going to drain off as much water as we can first. This water is actually fairly clear. I'm probably only going to wash it this one time. Alright, and we're going to go and open up these valves. I'll just put a temporary valve, or temporary handle on there and just fill off. And I'm just going to drain this off into a 5-gallon carboy again. And we're going to drain this until it changes colors back to biodiesel. And when that happens, we're going to go ahead and shut it down. Now, I'm about to fill this carboy up, so I'm going to have to grab another one here. But you sort of get the picture. So, again, back to here, we're draining off these 2 valves. And when it changes into biodiesel here, we're going to be done. And when we're going to go ahead and then we're going to go ahead and pump into our other drying barrel and evaporate off the last of the water. Pretty basic and straightforward. And we'll just drain this off at maybe a gallon a minute or something. That's about it. We're going to bring it back here in a few minutes after we are ready to pump into our tank. Alright, we're back now for the last step before we finish with our final product, and that's going to be drying. We've got our tank full of wet biodiesel. You can see it's kind of a milky color. And now we're going to pump into our drying barrel, which is basically the same as your preheater barrel. You want an open top on it so that the water that is attached to the biodiesel can go ahead and evaporate. So you want as much surface area as possible. And additionally, if you had a hot climate, that would be even better. So making biodiesel in the summer is a lot easier for that simple reason. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and open up, start again with all valves closed. We're going to open up the valve at the bottom of the tank. And we're going to open up the valve most upstream. And then we're going to go up to this manifold here, and we're going to open up this valve. And for the first part, we're just going to let gravity feed it in to this tank. Notice the vice grip. This is kind of the cheap and easy way to do it. If you want to put a bulkhead fitting on there, you're certainly welcome to. Some people who paid for one, I put a bulkhead fitting on there. Or if not, you can use something like this. It'll do a pretty good job of holding the hose there. Alright, so this is kind of a feature that I put on some people's manifolds. The third valve, the T in the third valve, you're welcome to do that yourself. Obviously, with keeping the price down. I can't add all the stuff. If yours does not have this third valve, what you've got here is your dome on your, the top on your filter housing. What you want to do is unscrew the filter housing from the bottom of that. Remove the screw-in filter element. Then reattach your housing here. Screw that back in. Make sure it's tight, good seal. And you can go ahead and pump through that fitting there without the element in it to your hose here and to the same thing. That way you won't gum up your housing, or rather your element. Okay, so instead, we've got our washed biodiesel that we've done a couple of washes on. And there's a lot of diffused water in there, as you can see. But we're going to go ahead and start pumping that now. So we're going to go ahead and make sure those valves are open. And you can see how it's murky and milky and all kinds of... There's a lot of water in there. There might even been some dissolved free fatty acids in there. That's why it was real thick on the bottom. It might have been just hydrogenated vegetable oil as well. I'm not positive what it was. We can sort of approach it after we've dried it. If it's real heavy, it will settle out in the drying barrel as well, and then we'll try to avoid that. So in which case, we're going to go ahead and pump that over here into our storage tank. In my case, you can see by my garage that it's quite rudimentary. I don't have a whole lot of extra whatever sitting around. But I do have a battery charger and a glass of wine. How nice. Anyways, so we've got these two 55-gallon drums, and I'll store my fuel in there for a couple of months. Well, actually, maybe not that long. Maybe about a month, depending on how much I go through. I only use about 30 gallons of fuel a month, depending on the season. So in that case, 100 gallons would last me about 3 months. But what you'll see is anything that's unreacted, like some unreacted fat or maybe some glycerin, will settle in the bottom of that 55-gallon drum. Then you'll pump off, maybe... When you remove your biodiesel to be used, you'll pump from maybe 3 or 4 inches off the bottom, so it's clear biodiesel. And there'll maybe be a little bit of grunge in the bottom of that. When I say grunge, I might mean unreacted fat, or I might mean some glycerin that continue to react or settle out. And when that happens, you just want to go ahead and refill that barrel a few times, and until there's like a noticeable amount, maybe a gallon or 2 gallons in the bottom of that barrel, and then you can just pour that off. Depending on what it is, you could react it, or it might be a waste product that you'll have to dispose of. Okay, so back to this. We're filling our drying barrel here, and that water, as you can see, it's kind of that murky color. Basically what we're looking for here is going to be a crystal clear finished product, and we are far from that now. So after we've pumped into here, we're going to go ahead and leave the lid off, and we're going to evaporate off that water. In this case of this batch here, it's about 40 degrees Fahrenheit outside right now, which is pretty awful as far as evaporating fuel goes. We have about 80 to 90% humidity, which is going to require much more time than if you were in the middle of the summer where it was 95 degrees out and about 20% humidity. It would evaporate much quicker then. So what we're going to do is we're going to wait for this barrel to fill. And you can see by the cone tank that it's almost drained out now. And once that barrel's full, we're going to go ahead and we're going to plug in our element. And we're going to go ahead and begin to reheat this mass up to... I think I'm going to take it up to about 150 to 170 degrees Fahrenheit and let it sit for 2 to 3 hours. And there we are, and we're done. So here's a little fine-tuning point here. Basically what you want to do here now, while the pump is still running, go ahead and shut off this valve here. Okay. And then you can make sure all the other valves are closed. And you can go ahead and shut your pump off. And if you really want to be tricky about it, you can go ahead and drain off just by lifting this hose up. Oh, now we got a problem. Or not. So now we have some floor cleaner there. That biodiesel will do a pretty good job of cleaning the floor. Not very smooth, but you know what? Again, I'm not a chemist. I'm just a guy who makes these. So anyways, so we've got our biodiesel here. So now we're going to go ahead and plug in our element, turn on our biodiesel drying tank, and we're good to go. So we're going to let this sit for about 6 hours, and we're going to check it in about 6 hours after it heats up to about 150, 170 degrees and holds there for a few hours. And this concludes this portion. We'll be back after we check how much water is evaporated and the clearness of our product. Okay, and we're back. For the final step of production process with this batch on this machine. What we got going on here is we are going to go ahead and transfer after drying our fuel. And after we washed our fuel, you may remember I drained off some of the biodiesel here with the water. When I drained off the water, I actually kind of got 3 layers. That stuff on the bottom is milky wash water with a little bit of alcohol and unreacted catalyst. Then the middle layer there are some unreacted fats. And those are pretty much bad news. It's not going to destroy your motor or anything like that, but it's not clean biodiesel either. So, and the top layer there, what I've got is clear biodiesel. So with a little more settling time, had I let that settle like 24 hours, had I let the wash water settle, say like 24 hours versus the 4 to 6 hours that I let it settle and drain it, that milky white layer would have been drained off, as well as the unreacted fats. So that would have eliminated what I've got here. So the longer you let it settle, the better of a yield you're going to get. Now, if I wanted to, I could pump off that top layer of biodiesel and re-react it, and I could even take off that top layer of fatty acids and re-react it in my next batch of biodiesel. Okay, so back here, so we're going to go ahead and we've on this model we've plumbed the or we're using this union here as our drying barrel. So on some units I put in another T here with an extra valve, which is probably a cleaner way to go. And that way you're going to be more upstream, and if there's any grunge in the line, you're not going to contaminate it. However, I'm doing it, and I'm not going to worry about it that much because I'm going to pump into my blue storage barrel over here. And anything that might be an impurity like that would be caught in the line or whatever is going to go ahead and be settling out in that blue storage barrel. So it'll be maybe a couple weeks before it might be a couple weeks before I pump into my car, and certainly all that will settle out in that matter of time. Okay, so what we've got here is we screwed on our filter. We've got our good clean biodiesel on the bottom there. And we're going to go through this pump here. So I'm going to start with all valves closed, open up the valves on the union, open up the valve going to the top of the fuel filter, and I'm going to put my hose in my 55-gallon drum, make sure everything's on, and I'm going to go ahead and turn on my pump. Alrighty, and I am going to fill this up. And you can see that running in there. And it's going to be draining out of our drying barrel here. You can't really see it too well. Okay, and that basically concludes this portion of it. After that drains in there, you could reuse your drying barrel for waste vegetable oil, but it's basically 100% ready to go at this point in time.